Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 14th day of January 2015. This is show number 1039. I'm your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining us, whether you're tuned in live or whether you're listening in via the archive. On tonight's show, we'll have, as usual, our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim just posted up a couple interesting stories, one about the Apple Watch and one earlier in the week about the Macintosh. And we'll talk to him about those two stories, along with other stories that have popped up in the Macintosh, Apple, iOS community over the last 7 days. We're also going to talk about disappointing iPad sales numbers. I heard from a little birdie that we're all going to be very surprised, many unhappily so, about the numbers Apple's going to announce for iPad sales for December, for the Christmas season. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're also going to talk about the iPhone as a camera in our starting point photography segment. Got some comments from folks about the iPhone. I want to address those when we get a chance later on in the show. I was ranting and raving on Twitter and on the show either last week or the week before, about the issues with junk mail filtering in Apple's native mail app, mail.app. And the problems I was having with it, I try to go at things, I try to look at things from the point of view of the average everyday user. And mail app, if you're an average everyday user, has got to be really frustrating. Clicking on the junk mail filter, marking things as junk, does nothing, at least for me, in the mail app. And I know, as Brian Monroe pointed out in the pre-show, that you can do server-side spam filtering, you can do other things, but the average person doesn't know about this stuff. The average person probably doesn't know whether they're using POP or IMAP for their servers. Now, if those words don't mean anything to you, you're the average person I'm talking about. So, Apple does their users a disservice by having some of the most spectacularly bad junk mail filtering available. I mean, it's just appalling how bad it is. And again, if you're the average person, you're getting inundated by spam. So I happened to be mentioning this on Twitter last week. And the developer of an app I've used in the past and just sort of forgotten about, called Spam Sieve, c-command/spam sieve. You just do a search for Spam Sieve on Google or on your favorite search engine. It will pop up. SPAMSIEVE, Spam Sieve. There's a quote there from Gruber, best email spam filter for the Mac, period. And he's right. I had forgotten how good Spam Sieve is. I get about 1,000 emails a day, and about 300 of them are spam. And mail just wasn't doing the job. Since installing Spam Sieve, and again, the developer of Spam Sieve reminded me that my old license for Spam Sieve still works. I couldn't find it, so he sent it to me. Installed Spam Sieve. Over the last week, not a single piece of spam has made it into my inbox. Not a single piece has made it into the inbox. Now, there are some issues, very minor, with Spam Sieve doing what's called false positives. In other words, they're catching some legitimate mail and marking it as spam. But that's the training process. It takes a fairly short period of time to train Spam Sieve. It happened fairly often. I've got Spam Sieve set to be really aggressive on what is spam. So it caught some stuff that was not spam. But that's fine. You go in and you train it as good, and that never happens again to that particular person's email or that mailing list or newsletter or whatever it might be. It's $30. If you have a friend, a family member, a relative that complains about spam and how that mail app doesn't do a very good job, get them Spam Sieve, buy them Spam Sieve, set it up for them, put it on their machines, install it, whatever you got to do, and they will not see spam anymore. It's simple as that. It's just done. Brian Monroe says, that's why I use my Gmail box for that sort of communications. no worries about spam there. Yeah, he's right. But some folks don't like using Gmail. Some folks, for any number of reasons, don't like Gmail. I don't use Gmail for anything but fluffy stuff. I wouldn't use it for business. I wouldn't use it for anything that's important to me. But I do have a couple of Gmail accounts. MacMan says, well worth it once you do a little training. Yeah, if you got a relative you see once a week, once a month, you put spam sieve on it, and once a week, once a month, you go to their house, you look at their spam box, and see if it's got any false positives there. And you train it to do well. And after a month, 6 months, whatever it might be, you won't have to worry about that anymore. It's well worth it. Also, we've had this really weird weather here in Vancouver over the past, 4 or 5 days, where we've had these, Vancouver, I'm sure it's true of most cities that have got the kind of geography that Vancouver has, because of the mountains on one side of us and the ocean on the other. Vancouver has these things called microclimates, which are, for you folks who live in the vast, wide open areas of the world, you wouldn't know what this is, but it means that there's different weather in different areas of the city. Like literally. Like a lot of places, if it's raining on the north side of town, it's raining on the east side of town. If it's raining in the south, it's raining in the west. In Vancouver, that's not true. It can be raining on the North Shore Mountains, and Surrey can have bright, sunny skies. Yesterday, I went out riding the motorcycle, and it was so foggy here in Surrey, it was almost dangerous riding the bike. I couldn't see to the end of a block. I couldn't see stoplights until I was a half block away from them. And if I can't see cars, cars can't see me. So it was kind of scary. So I was thinking to myself, you know what? I want to go down to Falls Creek here in Vancouver. It's down by the stadium, down by the Science Center. It's a really pretty area, a lot of boats down there. I thought that'd be really kind of cool to go down there and shoot those things in the fog. So off I go on the motorcycle. Brrr. I get downtown, bright, sunny skies. It's a beautiful blue day. There's not a spot of fog anywhere. Can't see fog anywhere. I ride out to the west part of town, what's called the UBC, University of British Columbia Endowment Lands. Completely socked in with fog. Nothing but, couldn't see anything. Couldn't see anything but fog. I ride out to Richmond, bright blue skies. I can't catch a break. I come home to Surrey, blanket fog. The fog was so bad last night, they canceled construction on some of the bridges around here because the workmen couldn't see. The fog was so bad. So hopefully tonight there's going to be fog, because what I want to do is I want to go out shooting light trail photography. You guys have seen this. It's where you'll set your camera up on a tripod in a spot and then open up the shutter and keep it open for 5, 10, 15 seconds, whatever it might be, and you'll get that really neat view of car headlights and taillights going by, that long yellow streak and that long red streak. But I want to get that in the fog. I think the fog might give a really neat effect to the light trails, to the street lights, things like that. So that's my goal tonight, is to go out riding, and not very far. It's going to be a little too chilly to ride too far, just around here in my neighborhood. MacMan, I've done some shots of lasers in the fog. Yeah, that kind of stuff is really kind of cool. And Brian points out they have microclimates in the San Francisco Bay Area and in San Francisco. I remember when I first moved to Vancouver, I lived in the North Shore. I stayed with my uncle, and I lived up 3/4 of the way up the mountains. It was March when we moved here. And I wake up one morning, I look outside, and there's 4 inches of snow on the ground. So I just moved here. I was 15, 16 years old from Nova Scotia. And so I got dressed up, my Nova Scotia stuff. Got my boots on, got my winter jacket on, got the furry hood, the whole deal. And I trundle out in the snow to the bus stop. And I get in the bus stop, and the bus driver goes, "You're not from around here, are you?" I'm like, how did he know that? So the bus starts going down the mountain, and we get halfway down the mountain, and the snow has turned into sleet, like a mixture of ice and snow. We get a quarter way down the mountain, and now it's freezing rain. We get all the way down to the mountain, at the base of the mountain, and it's raining. I take the sea bus over to Vancouver, it's cloudy. I take the sea bus deeper into Vancouver, and it's sunny. I went through like 7 different climate changes in one bus ride. And worse, it's now like 45 degrees where I am, and I'm sweating like a pig. Because I got big moon boots on, and a winter jacket, and gloves. It was hilarious. It was one of those days, you just did not address. Had no clue what clothes to put on. It's one of the reasons why I like the heated gear I'm using on the motorcycle, is because it's got dials on. It's not just on or off. It's got dials on, so I can dial in the amount of temperature I want without having to bulk up and put on too many clothes. And then when it gets warm, you can't move and you start sweating. I'm using fewer layers now, but I'm able to dial in the amount of heat I want, so it's very comfortable. If you have to be outside at all, if you're a motorcycle rider or anything else like that, it's called Gerbing heated gear. There's a bunch of companies that make it, but my stuff is Gerbing. And Brian says the weather in San Francisco can catch the tourist off guard. It really can, especially in the summertime, because you expect summertime the weather to be nice, but in San Francisco area, summertime actually sucks. It's the fall and winter in San Francisco that can be very, very nice. The years we went to Macworld Expo, it rained a couple of times on us, never for more than a day or so, but it was generally fairly mild. This was in January, February, March in San Francisco. It was usually quite balmy and nice for, Canadians. You're from Miami, it's still cold, but for us Canadians, it was quite pleasant. So do research. And that's the other thing too, is I'm just going nuts trying to find part of the problem is because we live in this microclimate area. It's tough to find a weather app that can deal with this. Where the temperature will be what it is in Surrey and a completely different temperature and conditions in Vancouver. I've yet to find a good, consistent, accurate weather app. I know a lot of folks like the Deep Sky app or the stuff from Forecast.io. It's just not very accurate here in Vancouver. Even the Canadian government weather app isn't particularly good here in Vancouver. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about, in our starting point photography segment, shooting photos with the iPhone and how you can and sometimes how you can't with the iPhone. Up next, though, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com about his Apple Watch and his Macintosh articles from loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King, joined on our phone by our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. How are you?
Good. You've got 2 long-form articles posted in the last week. You must be bored.
You know, I guess that must be it.
maybe that's what it is. You're just like, oh, what the hell? I'll just write. No, I think I don't know. You know the stats. I don't. I like your long-form stuff. I like to hear your thoughts about these kinds of things, and I'm sure hopefully you get a lot of good response from them, and you'll write more.
Yeah, well, you know, it was an interesting few months for me. So, you know, I'm trying to get back into writing and getting my opinions out there, and you know.
Well, I think what we need from you is more stronger opinions, Jim. You hold back way too much.
Yeah, that is a problem of mine, isn't it?
Exactly. Let's get your opinion about. We've seen this story a couple of times now in a couple of different versions. I posted about it on the Loop. The entitlement mentality. It was not announced, but discovered today that Apple has stopped giving out the free song of the week. They stopped the 12 days of Christmas this past Christmas. Any thoughts on whether this is a good thing, a bad thing, or completely irrelevant?
Well, I mean, to me, it's kind of irrelevant. I mean, Apple gives away something and they decide to stop giving it away. Okay, you know, I mean, it's whatever they decide to do. It's not that I expect it.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they decide that they want to give away something else, then that's fine. I mean, to be honest, I probably only downloaded one of the songs that was free for the past 10 years or whatever.
Really?
You know?
See, for me, I downloaded every single song that they gave away as a free song of the week, just out of curiosity. Because for me, it was a matter of curiosity of what Apple was going to promote this particular week. And there were, you know, I'll say that 75 to 80% of the songs were things that, not that they were bad songs, but it wasn't stuff I was interested in. It was country songs or things like that. But every now and then you'd hear of an artist, you go, oh, that's interesting. I want to hear some more from that person. And I'd download or buy some of their other stuff. But it was never an idea of, oh my God, Apple owes me this. That seems to be the prevalent attitude among far too many people. As I posted on the Loop, the entitlement mentality seems to be very prevalent in, maybe it's everyone, but certainly we see it more in the Apple community. Do you think part of this is Apple just going, you know what, screw all y'all. You whined about the YouTube thing. You whined about this. You whined about us giving not the exact right thing away. So, you know, we're not going to do it anymore.
You know what? If it was me, that's exactly what I'd do.
Me
I'd
too.
cut off everything that was free. just to spite all the whiners.
That's right. And I tell them that too. I would have posted something on the Apple website going, all right, fine, you fucking whiners, you ruin it for everybody. You're not getting nothing now.
But no, I don't think that's what they did. I mean, it's something that ran for quite a while, and you know, now it's over.
Yeah, exactly. And ArcSign makes a good point in the IRC chat room. He says, Shawn, Apple gives away free listening to thousands of songs through iTunes Radio every second of every day.
Yeah.
Now, that's only in the U.S. We don't get it up here in Canada, but his point is still made. Apple's still giving you a lot of free stuff. So stop.
Well, Canada still has crank radios too. So.
I got mine from Canadian Tire.
Yeah, so did everybody.
Exactly. Let's do a real quick wrap up of CES. Was there anything at CES that you heard about, cared about, wanted to learn more about?
The thing that I was most interested in is when it closed. Yeah, there was really nothing there that caught my eye.
No, nothing.
And you couldn't help but see all of the stories because they were everywhere.
Oh yeah. And the thing for me is, and this is so typical of CES, of the whole media mentality. And I get that CES is very important in a way that the media doesn't seem to get. The people who go to these shows. Perfect example is LaCie and Seagate announced new hard drives. And The Verge said, this hard drive is the world's thinnest, most beautiful portable hard drive. TUAW said Mirror is one of the more beautiful hard drives we've ever seen. Yeah, there's no hype there. They're freaking hard drives. Who cares what they look like?
Well, it's funny. I just bought my son one of those Porsche designed hard drives.
No, you didn't.
I did so.
Why? You paid an extra $100 for a Porsche designed square rectangle.
Because I don't know why.
Jeez, so you're one of those people I'm railing about.
Probably.
God damn it.
Well,
Come on, man. I mean, that's the thing. It's okay. So, I'm interested in the fact that Seagate and LaCie, new hard drives. Okay, we can all use new hard drives at more terabytes and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that The Verge and TUAW, among others, would describe these things as beautiful or sexy or anything other than it's a rectangle of gear.
Yeah.
Hyped to death. Nothing came out of CES that literally was of any interest to anybody in the actual space that CES is supposed to be covering, CES.
But there was 160,000 people there.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And
that's just a good reason for me to stay away.
Yeah, no kidding. CES is about the deals that are made behind the scenes in hotel rooms and on the show floor and at parties. It's less about what the media is actually allowed to go to. And the vast majority of media has no purpose to be at CES. They don't know what the hell they're covering. They don't have a clue. You see all these Mac websites who send whole crews to CES and don't have a clue about what CES is, just wasting our time.
Well, it must pay off for the people that go, and that's fine. Next week I'm going to NAMM in Anaheim to talk music stuff. So, I hope people find some of that stuff interesting. I know I will.
You better write well about it. That's all I can ask you. All I can ask. You have a story up on the loop. We talked about this on Amplified this morning. The success or failure of Apple's next device. And one of the comments that you made, I thought was really interesting. You said, I can be convinced about buying the Apple Watch if the watch eases some problem in my life. I thought it was an interesting statement. Do you know of a problem you want the watch to solve, or are you looking?
No, but I didn't know of a problem I wanted the iPhone to solve either.
That's why I'm asking the question. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what Apple's so brilliant at.
Yeah.
They release products that we don't know that we need.
Yep.
And then we need them. So, is there something that the Apple Watch is going to solve for me? And it doesn't have to be a huge pain point. Sometimes it's just an annoyance. Is there something that's going to solve? I don't know, because I haven't really used it that much.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe it will.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see.
I think that's what you and I have spoken about before. Is I'm not going to buy an Apple Watch because right now I don't see the utility in it. But there very well could happen 6 months after the Apple Watch is released this coming spring, where I go, oh my God, I have to have that.
Right.
I don't know what that is. I literally have no clue. I cannot imagine anything that I want the Apple Watch. A problem I have that I think the Apple Watch can solve.
I think that we knew what the iPad was going to be.
Yeah.
But there are things that Apple does. One of my favorite features of OS X is the notification center.
Yeah.
I love that it just pops up and shows me what just came in, so I don't have to leave what I'm doing to check email or check a message or whatever, to find out that it's nothing and then go back and have to find my place again and keep writing. This is the way that it should be. So there was a pain point that I didn't really know that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fixed.
I find it interesting that Apple does these things in Apple's way and not the way that the user might want them to be. I say this because you bring up Notification Center. I love Notification Center and I hate Notification Center. I love it because of exactly what you said. I hate it because I can't change where those notifications pop up. They're right now in the upper right-hand corner of my screen.
Perfect.
That's perfect for you, exactly. It's not perfect for me. I would like to have
them. Too bad.
That is exactly what I'm saying. That's what Apple says too. There is no way to change where Notification Center pops up. For whatever reason, because I've got two screens here, I'm generally staring at the center 3/4 of those two screens. So
if it was me listening to this and you were complaining about that, I would make notifications on yours bounce all over the screen so that you couldn't click them out. Or I would let it sit there, and just as you put the mouse on it, it would drop.
It would jump somewhere.
Yeah. And by the end of the day, you'd have notifications all over your screen just bouncing.
But you understand what I'm saying. You know, it would be nice if I could configure Notification Center to show up to notify me in the place I want to see them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I understand what you're saying. I mean, for me, it's in the perfect spot. It's in the top right-hand corner. It's a place I don't normally go to, so it doesn't interfere with anything except the search box and mail on an 11-inch.
Yeah.
You know, it does do that. So.
Speaking of the 11-inch Air, I posted on The Loop a story called A Final Laptop from a developer named Matt Jamel. Matt's a really neat guy. I think he lives in, I know he lives in the UK. I think he lives in Scotland. Really? Did you read that piece by any chance, Jim?
I have it in my, I was going to read it and see if I was going to post it. And I saw you had it up there. But Matt Kimball's just, he's a great writer.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I went to see him in Scotland last year.
So yeah, he is in Scotland. He writes really interestingly about this, and I want to get your thoughts about it too. Is where he's saying basically that the MacBook Air for him, not for everybody, but for him, is the perfect laptop. He no longer needs the full blown power of a desktop, of an iMac, of even a full MacBook Pro. That the way he writes now, the way he works now. Battery life is more important than anything else. But the MacBook Air, he's got a 2013 11-inch MacBook Air, which I think is the same one that you have, isn't it, Jim?
I believe so.
He says the battery lasts all day long, and you said the same thing about your Air. You don't need, the vast majority of people no longer need the full-blown power of certainly a Mac Pro, probably of an iMac, and probably of a MacBook Pro. That the Air is suitable for the vast majority of consumers out there, isn't it?
Well, look, when I can load up a couple of 100 tracks in GarageBand on a MacBook Air, I don't know what else I would need. I use Pro Tools on my MacBook Air.
Wow.
You know, so there's very little that I can't do on my Air. So I don't know what I would need something hugely powerful for. Now, I run Pro Tools, but, you know, there's a lot of extras that I could do, I suppose. And that's why I need my Pro. You know, when I get my Pro going, you know, what I can do is virtually unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
So
you don't think the screen size is an issue? I mean, I've seen some videos, I've seen some screenshots of Pro Tools and apps like Final Cut Pro and even Photoshop, apps that have a lot of visual elements in them. But you don't find that to be a problem on an 11-inch screen?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I'm going to do some serious mixing or editing or things like that, but you know, the fact is you're usually only doing one track at a time when you're editing. So you blow that track up and, you know, you make your cuts and adjustments and, you know, everything that you're going to do in it. So for me, that part is fine. Maybe for video, it might be a bit different, but, you know, I'm just saying that it has the power to run this stuff. It doesn't pop up and say, oh no, you fool. This is an Air. You can't run that big bad software on this.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the concern I would have, not from a power point of view, using a MacBook 11-inch Air. For me, it's the visuals of it, of trying to do photography editing. And I generally I'll have my photographs on my big screen so I can zoom in on them and see them in a bigger picture, as opposed to trying to do it on the 11-inch Air. But I certainly believe that it has enough power for me. That being said, we hear these rumors about what Apple's going to do for the next version of the MacBook Air. I honestly don't care anymore, because I know the Air as it stands now, as you've said with your 2013 version of it, would be absolutely fine for me from the point of view of it can do the editing I need to do. It can do all-day battery life, which is hugely important. The new version of the MacBook, except for a Retina display, don't care.
Yeah, well, I do. I think, you know, if you're looking at something that's even more lightweight and easier to get around, that's kind of where we're going now.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, going down to NAMM next week, I'll have an 11-inch Air and an iPad and my iPhone.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have everything I need and all the power of computing that I need.
Is there something that you'd like it to do that it doesn't do now? Can you think of anything? No. That was basically Matt's point, that he can't think of anything. It checks all his boxes, he says. He can't think of anything that he'd like it to be able to do.
I can't think of anything.
You know, I've been seriously thinking about my next laptop when this one, I've got a 2011 MacBook Pro 15-inch, thinking that when I need to get another one, and hopefully it's not too long, it'll definitely be an Air. One of the things I have a problem with is that the MacBook is very difficult to fit in the saddlebags of a motorcycle. And I worry about it bouncing around in there. I would like to be able to have something smaller that I can wrap up in protective.
Well, don't crash and it won't bounce around.
Well, even just, you know, hitting potholes and speed bumps kind of thing, it's going to bounce around. So I have a concern for that, but that's my only real concern. The only thing, and because I don't need the full CPU power anymore of the MacBook Pro, I think a MacBook Air is going to be my next machine.
Yeah, well, I just bought my son a 13-inch Air, and he loves it. He can't get over how powerful it is. Yeah.
And is he doing the same kind of music stuff that you are? I know he's a guitar player too. Does he do a lot of editing or anything like that?
He's doing gaming.
Oh, okay. He's doing gaming on that thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, powerful machine.
And he doesn't have any complaints about CPU or graphics chip or anything else like that?
Nothing.
No.
Nothing. No. Great.
I don't know. I'm not going to say it's the end of the line for laptops. It's just that there's not a whole lot more design-wise Apple can do. It's got to be the shape it is. Apple's never going to make a round laptop, obviously.
No, but we thought that, and they came out with a wedge shape too. You know, to make it even thinner, and you know, there are things that they can do.
But don't you think most things that they're going to be able to do are just going to be incremental? And the laptop is the shape it is for a reason. You're not going to see a lampshade laptop like they did with the iMac. It's going to stay that shape because it has to.
Well, yeah, it's best to stay that shape, but there are different things that they could probably do to surprise us and make us clap.
Did you see the story posted on the Loop? The Curved Labs Macintosh meets the iPad Air.
I did see that. The video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it though. I was writing.
This thing is absolutely gorgeous. You got to watch the video. It's just incredibly pretty. It's completely impractical. I don't think Apple. This is not an Apple design. This is obviously from a different company that's decided to do a render. These are all renders. These aren't actual real machines. But it's interesting to see other companies, other people doing these concepts of what might be. We saw a lot more of this when we were, I guess, in the mid-'90s. The company that did a lot of Apple designs called Frog Design showed off a lot of these avant-garde and out there designs for various things from Apple. Very few of them were actually made. But it was kind of neat to see folks thinking outside the box and thinking, hey, if there were no constraints on manufacturing ability or price or that kind of stuff, what are the kind of machines we can come up with. I think the 20th anniversary Macintosh was an example of that. You know, if money's no object, what can we invent? And I think it's kind of neat to see these kind of things. Apple's never going to make this machine, so don't anyone think that this is going to be the next version of the iMac or anything else like that. But it certainly is a really interesting design. And real. Have you ever sat down and talked to any of the folks at Frog Design, Jim, in your travels?
I talked about design of what?
Talk to the Frog Design folks about their work with Apple.
No.
I did it a couple of times by accident at a Macworld Expo. Just happened to see a badge on somebody at a Macworld Expo that said they worked for Frog Design. And I asked him what they did, and he told me that he was a designer. And we talked for about half an hour. It was really interesting to get a little bit behind the scenes type stuff because they did design some of the early Macintosh stuff, but their more out there things were quite often just ignored by Apple, or they were told that, you know, these things can't be made kind of stuff. But Steve Jobs liked them. He liked the company, and he liked the kind of out there designs that they came up with, because you might see, like prototype cars, you won't see the prototype car being made, but you might see elements of it being made. If you see, there's a book of old Frog Design Apple prototypes, and if you look at the book, none of those things were ever made, but you can sort of see this little piece on this was brought into the iMac, or this little piece was brought into the MacBook Pros kind of thing. It was interesting to see how some of these design elements might have made it into the future of what these folks were looking at. Yeah. No,
I mean, there are some great designers out there. So,
speaking of designers, I saw this story over the holidays, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Tim Berners-Lee, famous for being the inventor of the World Wide Web, called on governments to ensure greater equality for their citizens. That's a good thing. Except one of the things that he said should belong in that greater equality is internet access. He believes that internet access is a fundamental, his word, fundamental human right. Do you agree with that?
Interesting question. There's so much information on the internet these days that, it almost seems beyond me to think that people don't have access to
sure,
it.
yeah.
But a lot of people don't. And, it's not just useless information that we can look up.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of factual stuff like Wikipedia. Everything on there is true.
Nice try, pal.
I don't know. In today's world, I think, with all the freedoms and everything that a lot of us have, I think when you're looking at starving people, I think food is more of a necessity than the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be great to see everybody have internet.
The United Nations has a Declaration of Human Rights. Obviously, some of them are fairly obvious. All humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of their person. No one person shall be held in slavery or servitude. I think obviously we have a right to shelter, to food. I can't put internet access in the list that would fit in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I don't think internet access is a human right. That is fundamental to every single 7 billion person on the planet. I think it's important.
Yeah, but, a lot of those other things aren't available to all 7 billion people on the planet either. So.
True. I certainly agree with that. But those are the kind of things that we should be working towards, more so than making sure that some guy in Zimbabwe has, Ethernet.
Yeah. Give them food, shelter, and Ethernet.
Exactly. That's right. Not Wi-Fi, though. Wi-Fi is not a human right. But but we don't even have, universal internet access for people here in North America.
No.
You know, there's still lots of folks who are stuck, quote unquote, stuck on dial-up. My mom back in Nova Scotia lives on a farm outside of Bridgewater, and she's on dial-up. So my mom, for all intents and purposes, doesn't have access to the same internet that you and I do.
That's right.
And that's true of a lot of the inner city poor in America, that they don't have access to internet, period, let alone even dial-up, let alone high-speed internet access. I think one of the frustrations I have is that we see how internet access is so much better in other countries. I think South Korea has internet access that's like 100 times better than what we get here in North America. That our internet access here in North America, when compared to the rest of the world, is actually pretty bad from a speed and a cost point of view.
Yeah.
You know, you have friends and I have friends and we have listeners and readers in Europe. And when they come over here to visit, you hear them on Twitter or Facebook just appalled at the awful internet access that they get here, the quote-unquote slow speeds they get when they're talking about the free stuff they get in those damn socialist countries of Europe. I think that's something we need to work more towards than maybe universal access to a human right such as internet access. It's an interesting point of view that Berners-Lee had. I think he's a little bit biased because he's the guy who is always described as the guy who invented the World Wide Web. So he's got a dog in the hunt. But I don't see it yet as being at that important a level. But 60% of the world's population cannot get on the internet. 60%. More than 4 billion people have no internet access.
A lot of those are in Canada.
Well, do Eskimos really need internet access? I mean, still, can you get Wi-Fi in an igloo? Isn't there some sort of blockage? Isn't it like a Faraday cage? I'm not quite sure how it works.
Canada's version of BuzzFeed, 5 ways to skin a beaver.
Now, that's a fundamental human right, is how to learn how to skin a beaver.
There you go.
I'll back that. Folks, been talking to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim and I did an Amplified this morning. You can find it on 5by5.tv/Amplified. It's also up on loopinsight.com and on the iTunes store. Got a great deal there for the folks at lynda.com. A free 10-day trial of all 3,000 of lynda.com videos. Go to loopinsight.com and check it out, or go to lynda.com/Amplified for your free 10-day trial. Jim, thanks very much for joining me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you next week. See ya.
Bye.
So, a little birdie told me that Apple's going to announce, by the way, January 27th, Apple's going to announce their fourth quarter results. And for Apple, the fourth quarter or the first quarter, I can't remember. But anyway, the Christmas buying season just gone past. So Apple's going to announce results for the Christmas buying season 2014. This is an easy prediction. I predict Apple is going to sell, or will tell us they sold, a metric buttload of iPhones. I predict Apple is going to announce they have sold, in the past 3 months, a metric buttload of Macintoshes. Last quarter, Apple sold 5 million Macintoshes. I think the Christmas quarter, I'm going to say 5.5, closer to 6 million Macintoshes. Apple's not going to break that down into how many MacBook Pros versus MacBook Airs versus iMacs. But I'd be willing to bet it's a 50-50 split between laptops and desktops. Apple's going to announce they sold a lot fewer iPods. No surprise there. But they're still going to announce they sold like 3 million iPods. Still going to be the biggest MP3 manufacturer on the planet. The worst news is Apple's going to announce they've sold significantly fewer iPads than they did in the previous holiday quarter. The numbers are going to be somewhere around a drop of, my little birdie didn't couldn't give me specifics, but I'm going to guess a 5% drop in iPad sales. Apple's still going to sell, make no mistake about it, Apple's still going to have announced they've sold millions of iPads. Millions upon millions of iPads. But they're going to have sold a lot fewer than they did the year previous. This is going to cause a tsunami of stories in the tech media. The iPad is dead. Tablets are dead. Apple is dead. Apple is doomed. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Oh, sell, sell, sell. The day of the announcement, Apple's stock price will drop $10. That's a given. Apple's going to make this announcement, and the stock's going to drop $10. It's no big deal. It's going to come back. Inside of a week, stock will be back. The question is, how is Apple going to react to this news? They know. Obviously, they have the numbers. They know. Will Apple not sit on its laurels, but not worry about this? I don't think they should. They're still going to sell again. At least, I don't know, someone find me the numbers. How many iPads did Apple sell in the Christmas quarter of 2013? Someone find that out. Someone Google search that. Whatever number that is, it's going to be awful close. It's just going to be fewer. And we've seen in the last 2 quarterly announcements, when Apple has announced a drop in iPad sales, how the Chicken Littles ran around in a blind panic. It's going to get worse. If you think the articles were bad before, it's going to get worse. And I'm just saying this to prepare you for it. To get ready for the deluge of asshat commentary. Well, Monty says they will react publicly the same way they always do, by saying nothing. Yes. How will Apple react internally, privately? My little birdie said that Apple's going to react in a way, I don't think it's going to be called an iPad Pro, but that kind of concept. A bigger, better, faster, more robust version of the iPad. I don't know if that's true. Bigger, better, more robust, yeah, but I don't think Apple's going to call it the iPad Pro. I think the iPad Pro is an awful name. I think it's going to be the next version of the iPad. I don't think Apple needs a Pro version of the iPad. I think the iPad is a consumer electronic device. It's not a Pro device. Yes, pros use them, and you can do pro things on them, but it's not a professional device, professional tablet. That's why I don't think Apple's going to come out with an iPad Pro called that. MacMan says a Surface-like iPad may be good for the enterprise market. MacMan, do you mean a Surface-type device with an attached keyboard type thing? Because I think that's a possibility. Apple knows about the popularity of iPad keyboards. Apple knows that a lot of folks like the idea of the iPad keyboard. I wonder if Apple might go whole hog on this. Remember, for you old-timers out there, Apple used to have a machine called the Duo Dock. And what it was a laptop and a desktop. When it was closed, it slid into a docking port that was attached to a monitor. And so it became a desktop. And when you pulled it out, it became a laptop. You could take it around with you. I wonder if that might be something Apple would look at in the future. That kind of two-in-one device that Microsoft and other companies have tried to make work. Would that be of interest to anybody out there? We were talking with Jim about the power of a MacBook Pro. Would you like an iPad that docked in some way, shape, or form to a desktop setup, and then not like a surface that folded over, because then it'd be too thick. But imagine a full-size keyboard that sat on your desk, and it would have maybe it would have ports on it. I don't know. Certainly would have power. And when you came to your desk, you dropped your iPad into it, and now you had a keyboard for your iPad. And you had power, so it would recharge your iPad as you sat there, and then you could type away. But when you wanted to get up and move around, you just pop the iPad off the keyboard docking station. That's a possibility. I don't know if that's happening. I don't know. I haven't heard anything along those lines from little birdies. Monty, how do you get an iPhone service plan with a debt? Oh, sorry. Should have done something else. Sorry. But I just want you guys to be ready for the ass hattery that is coming our way. The iPad is fine. Apple is not going to discontinue the iPad. Apple's not going to stop selling the iPad. Apple is not going to cube or Newton the iPad. It's still going to sell millions and millions and millions of devices. Not as many as it did before. And that's going to be a surprise and shock to a lot of people. The interesting thing is, I'd love to know how much of this decline in iPad sales is because of what some folks have talked about, the longer life cycle of the iPad. Your iPhone life cycle is about 18 to 24 months. The iPad life cycle looks like it's 4 to 5 years. So maybe that means that in another 2 years' time, we'll see a ramp up of iPad sales as people get rid of their older ones. Or how much of this decline in iPad sales is attributable to the iPad 6 and the screen size of the iPad 6 and 6 Plus. I wonder how many people bought a 6 Plus, use it, and realize they don't need a new iPad. That the 6 Plus screen, good enough. Not as big as an iPad, but you know what? It's good enough for whatever it is they want to do on their iOS device. I'd love to find out what percentage of buyers of the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus thought that. Logan's asking why Shawn keeps mentioning Little Birdie. Logan, Little Birdie is my code word for a source. Someone who I trust, who has this information and who has passed it on to me. I can't name them by name because they'll get in trouble. So I call them Little Birdie. Monty's asking about an MNVO. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a third-party company that leases equipment from a major player. So you might see a small ISP that's piggybacking on a larger ISP. In this case, in cell phones, an MNVO is a company that leases equipment from the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world. In theory, anybody can become an MNVO. There's been talk many times over the past that Apple would become their own cell provider by becoming an MNVO. Apple might still conceivably do that, where you would sign up your iPhone cell service with Apple, and Apple just rents the equipment from Verizon or TELUS here in Canada, or Rogers here in Canada, or AT&T, or those kinds of companies. So again, just to remind you guys, it's coming. The tsunami she's a coming. Get ready for it. I was talking earlier about in our starting point photography segment. I got a really neat. I don't know. I mentioned this before. There is a thing called Meetup.com. And Meetup.com is actually kind of fun. especially if you're new to an area or have trouble meeting new people. You go to meetup.com, you sign up, you give it a list of your interests. They've got a huge, long list of interests from travel to hiking, photography, motorcycling, fine dining, theater, whatever it might be. All kinds of different thousands and thousands and thousands of meetup groups. And I belong to a few photography meetup groups. And so I started up my own, Starting Point Photography Meetup Group. And we've got 180, almost 180 members now in the 3 or 4 months it's been up and running. We've gone on 8 meetups. And a meetup is kind of fun because all it is you do exactly that. You meet up and you do whatever it is that's the subject of the group. So, for example, one of my motorcycle meetup groups meets up at a local dealership and they do seminars. I missed tonight's because it's obviously Wednesday night. Tonight's was motorcycle first aid. And they taught you what to do, what not to do if you come upon an accident that involves a motorcyclist. For example, you don't remove the helmet, kind of thing. So these guys get together every now and then. There is a meetup group for motorcycle riders that do trips up to Squamish here in Vancouver, north of Vancouver, south of Whistler. It's about a 45-minute ride up the Sea to Sky Highway. Beautiful, beautiful ride. And so in the summertime, they'll set up a meetup and we'll all get together on a Tuesday afternoon or Saturday morning. We'll all get together, meet up, and then go out for a ride. The photography groups are the same way. We're all going to meet up this Sunday and we're going to go down to Gastown and we're going to photograph Gastown as a group. So they're fun kind of things to do. Well, I got an interesting email from somebody where they say they'd love to join my meetup group, but they're waiting they're waiting to join until they buy what they call a real camera. I said, what do you mean by a real camera? And they said, well, I've only got an iPhone. I said, what iPhone do you have? Oh, I'm a 5S. Well, the iPhone 5S has a real camera on it. that little thing in the back, that's a real camera. It takes pictures. Oh, yeah, but it's not good enough for your group. It's absolutely good enough for my group. One of the things you guys who have been listening to me for over the years know, my thing is learn to take better pictures with the camera you already have. Whether that's an iPhone, an Android phone, a point and shoot, a DSLR, a mirrorless, whatever it might be. Learn to take good photos with that device. And you can take some damn good photos with the iPhone. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. Now, if your photos with the iPhone aren't any good, there's a number of reasons for that. Some of which involve you maybe not knowing how to take good photos. Some of them involving the fact that you are trying to be outside of the performance envelope of the iPhone. This is what her issue was. She said, well, I try to take pictures in low light situations and it doesn't come over well. Yeah, because the iPhone sucks in low light. That's one thing the iPhone is not good at, low light photography. That's just the performance envelope of the iPhone. Nothing you can do about that. The iPhone, as it stands right now, there's nothing you can do about its low light performance. But if the problem is low light, how do you solve that problem? Well, you get more light. And it's kind of easy to do. There's kind of different ways of doing it. You can, I showed you guys a few weeks ago the Nova light. This little Bluetooth light you can carry around. I got this in my pocket on my motorcycle jacket. You can carry it around and shine light on things. You can use a secondary light from another phone. I've taken pictures with my iPhone of somebody using their iPhone as a light source. And you just sort of hide it out of the frame. If you want to take a picture of someone in a low light situation, say you're in a bar, have them stand underneath the light. Or if the bar has candles, hold a candle up near their face. If the problem is low light, just get more light. The iPhone itself takes doggone good pictures in the right situation. Just make sure you're in the right situation. Don't let the fact that you only have an iPhone stop you from taking pictures or hanging out with photographers. Anybody who would look down on you as a photographer because you're shooting with an iPhone, get that person out of your life. One of the reasons why I started this group was because some of the other groups I was involved in, some of the photographers did do exactly that. They were pros, and you can only shoot with pro equipment. You can only shoot with a DSLR. That's not true. Not true at all. So I started this group to help those folks who didn't have pro equipment, who only had an iPhone, and were happy with the iPhone. I got on this not only because my friend asked about joining the group and said that they only had the iPhone. Monty says a 5S is a pretty damn good camera. Add a set of Olo clips, and you've got a great start to digital photography. MacMan says most point-and-shoot cameras suck at low light. Mosquito, I'm always happy to have the iPhone, and before that the iPod with me to be able to take quick pictures. Mosquito says I almost got the 5S because I like the shape better. I got an email from one of our favorite listeners. Just grab the email real quick. Don Beck. Don's in Martha's Vineyard. He says, in the photography segment of your last show, someone had asked what camera should they buy. This got my mind wandering and fantasizing about what I would want. I've been taking amateur pictures since the mid-50s. Don, you're old, dude. First with my father's 1938 Leica. Man, I bet that thing's worth something now. Then a Minolta SLR, then a Canon SLR. In the 90s, I got into digital photography when working for Kodak, testing the Mac version of the software they gave away. When I left there, I bought my own Kodak with a 3-megapixel autofocus and 3 times optical zoom. It had a program mode since I was ready to just have a point and shoot, but I could still also set shutter or aperture preferred mode. I had everything I needed for a while. Ever since it died, and probably before that, I've used an iPhone. One advantage, of course, was that it is always with me. The two main things I wish it had in a camera, the iPhone doesn't have, is optical zoom and a controllable aperture. Aperture control allows me to have the option of playing with depth of field. An optical zoom will allow me to get my pictures of my son playing soccer or basketball, of birds, the rising moon, portraits without being in someone's face, etc. My Canon SLR has a 35mm to 135mm zoom lens. I'd like at least 250, but not much more due to size and stability. My fantasizing about a new camera, which I can't justify at this time, isn't a DSLR, but a new mirrorless camera. From what you and others have said, the Olympus would be perfect for me. The thought of carrying a bulky DSLR just doesn't seem worth the advantage to me. And this is where his email gets interesting. The first picture, I recently upgraded my iPhone from a 4S to a 6. Boy, what a difference. These pictures were taken last week. So you folks watching the video, I'm going to post up the pictures that he sent me. On a very, very cold morning, it was 3 degrees Fahrenheit, there's a phenomenon called sea steam. There's a mist hovering over the ocean just in the early morning. It doesn't happen here very often. I knew it would be hard to capture with a telephoto lens, but I couldn't resist taking pictures anyway. He says, the first picture is my end result. This picture, I'll show you guys so there's another picture of the beach that he was at. Now, these pictures were taken with an iPhone 6. These are really good pictures, Don. I like both of them. They're really nice. But look at the cropped version of the iPhone 6 shot. It's a cropped version of the second picture. Aside from cropping, I did not enhance it in any other way. Being able to zoom in this well, unfortunately, means it will be even longer before I can justify a mirrorless camera. That's on Martha's Vineyard. That is really good, Don. Again, here's the uncropped version of it. If you folks watching the video, in the center of the frame, you can see the seagull. And when you crop into it, it's a much better shot of the seagull and I'm assuming the seawall and the sea steam. really good shot, Don. I mean, seriously, impressive zoom on the digital, impressive crop on this. Now, it's not something you could probably print out. You know, it's probably not something that you can hang on a wall. But for Facebook, for Twitter, for sending off to friends, that's obviously a very, very good shot. Again, he's shooting within the performance envelope of the device he's using. It's a nice sunny day. He didn't do any digital zoom to ruin it. Camera's held steady. The subject matter is interesting. It's a good shot. That's a good picture, Don, no matter what camera you're using. It doesn't matter that it's shot with an iPhone. It wouldn't matter if it was shot with an SLR. It wouldn't matter if it was shot with a mirrorless camera. It's a good picture. Full stop, period, end of story. So as I've been telling my friend, don't let anyone tell you that you can't shoot good photographs with an iPhone. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't hang out with photographers because you've only got an iPhone. I would encourage you to obviously learn how to shoot better pictures in general. There's obviously classes and books and all kinds of stuff that you can do. But simply because you have an iPhone does not mean that you are not a photographer. Thanks for the email, Don. I appreciate that. Got an email from Mark Poland in Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful city. Love Charleston. I recently read an article by Adrian Kingsley Hughes of ZDNet titled, Apple has a serious problem with software quality. He mentions the "it just works" mantra is no longer true. It's never been true. It's never been true. That's part of the problem with this whole discussion that people have been having about Apple and software quality. They keep throwing up this "it just works" idea. It often worked, but no Macintosh, no computer is completely so simple to use that you never have to worry about it or do anything with it. Yes, your toaster just works. Your computer doesn't. But Mark says, I'm beginning to believe this since, for example, I nor any of my friends can get messages to sync with other owned iOS devices. I believe Jobs' way of having control over everything and having a small number of devices would enable Apple to squash bugs to have the best user experience possible. He's getting sloppy without him there. I'd like to hear any comments from you or the Beard. There's no doubt that Apple's software isn't as good as it used to be. Okay? But Apple software is also multitudes and multitudes times more complicated than it used to be. Now, if you ran 7.5 and never had a problem, good for you. You're one of the lucky few. How many of us out there, raise your hand, use Conflict Catcher? How many of you had to watch that dance of icons along the bottom of your screen and figure out which one was corrupted? Lots of people did. It was a daily battle. I had Conflict Catcher had different setups for it. If I wanted to print, I had to turn off a bunch of things that were conflicting with printing. So I have to reboot with a different Conflict Catcher setup. It never just worked. It just worked more often than Windows. And it just worked with less stress, frustration, and hassle. But it never just worked. Now, that being said, for the vast majority of people, Apple iOS devices and Macs work fine. There's no doubt about that. Yes, we're all going to have some issues here and there with this, that, or the next thing. But overall, Apple's software quality has gone down. How many of you remember the iTunes version that, if you installed it, would delete your hard drive? Literally. A lot of folks don't remember that. If you installed iTunes with a hard drive named a particular thing, iTunes deleted the hard drive. Look at the issues we have with iOS 8. the issues we've had with any number of versions of OS X. But part of it is because the software is getting more and more complex as users and Apple wants that software to do more and more things. And as I said on Amplified this morning, we keep forgetting Apple is not an infinitely large company. They have limited resources. They have limited numbers of people who can work on this stuff. And because of the overlap with iOS and Mac OS X, some of those folks work on both of those things, and they get pulled off to do other things. Overall, the Mac OS X, is great. It is amazing. Does things that I couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. I know the overall Mac OS X doesn't crash on me anymore. God, how many times in OS 8 did we learn Command S, Command S, Command S, Command S? You were constantly saving things because your machine could lock up at any second. You had no idea, especially if you were running certain pieces of software like Office or Quark Express or early versions of Photoshop. Word was notorious for that kind of stuff, which is your screen would freeze. And hopefully you'd just save, because otherwise you lost everything. Because the only way to solve that in those days was rebooting the machine. Sometimes unplugging the machine. It was awful. I haven't had to do that on the Macintosh in, at least 10 years. It's kind of funny now. I'll have, for whatever reason, the Finder will lock up on me. In OS, anything before 10, that generally meant your machine was frozen. It was hard to recover from that. Now, I can have the Finder lock up on me, and I'll go, I'll get to it when I get to it. And just keep working. Just keep doing email and web browsing and doing what I do. It didn't affect me. Yeah, when I get around to it, I'll restart the Finder or I'll reboot. No big deal. But these issues that folks are having can't be dismissed easily. I hope Apple has seen the discussion surrounding this over the last week or so. And I hope Apple's not going to stop putting new features into the software. That's just not going to happen, whether it be iOS or whether it be Mac OS X. Apple's unlikely to stop with the yearly release cycle because consumers demand that sort of thing. What Apple might do is not put as much stuff into a full release version and save it for the .1 versions. Add features more incrementally than they have in the past. I mean, Apple can still say, well, we got 200 new things in this. We don't care. No one counts those. No one cares. You give me 1-2 cool new things in a new version of the OS, that's fun. They don't have to have 200 all brand new, all new, no. I'm okay with that. I'm not on that path anymore. I need new things every single time. ArcSign, Shawn, when will we stop saying Apple is a small company? When it reaches 50,000? 100,000 employees? How many employees does Apple have now? Someone, again, Google searched that for me. I think it's 17,000, I want to say. But their engineering department, their coders, are significantly smaller than that. Apple is a small company by any measure when it comes to the engineering talent. I think Apple's got more retail employees than they have engineers. I think I've read that somewhere. I wouldn't doubt it. That's for sure. Monty says, as a support person, I would much rather see fewer new feature releases in favor of stability improvements and bug fixes. Yeah, absolutely. And Mosquito points out retail is easier to scale up than development. Exactly. It's hard to find coders of the quality Apple needs and wants for their operating systems. It's just fewer of them out there than there are people who can sell in retail. Oi, Apple changing the release cycle isn't something to do in response to a perception of software issues. Progress is messy. I agree, progress is messy. But when that messy affects the perception of your company, and when it affects the perceived utility of your company's products, I got to say, everyone in the IRC chat room, we don't mind messy. We're old school Mac users. We've dealt with messier things. But if, as Apple says, half of their new customers are new to the Macintosh, you don't want messy for them. Because those are the folks who could, in theory, easily say, well, Macintosh experience was awful. I'm going to go buy a Compaq. I'm going to go buy an HP, Lenovo. For me, Apple would have to get a hell of a lot messier before I would ever think about not buying a Macintosh. It would have to get a hell of a lot messier before I would stop buying iOS devices and switch to Android. A lot messier. I mean, possibly causing death, I think, is the level of messy it would take. There'd have to be a good chance of my Mac killing me before I'd switch to Windows. Like, literally killing me. Okay, Apple would say, here's OS 11. There's a chance on every reboot you could die. I'd say, what's the chance? Is it significantly higher than what I'm comfortable with? Before I would switch to Windows. So, just... email question from Darren Thrift about cameras. The question, I'm passionate about photography, and I'm bitten by the DSLR bug, but I don't know which brand to buy and what type of lenses. I'm a beginner. Can you suggest to me how to get some expertise in this? Yeah, buy a camera. There it is. Just buy any camera. As I'm learning as I get older and more gray, as I talk to other people, your first camera won't be your last camera. As we said on Amplified this morning, your first guitar won't be your last guitar. As I've learned in the motorcycling community, your first motorcycle won't be your last motorcycle. Just buy one. Learn how to use it. If you've been bitten by the DSLR bug, buy a DSLR. Buy a cheap one, buy an expensive one, doesn't matter. Buy one. Learn to use it. If it comes with a kit lens, use the kit lens. You don't need to buy any of the lenses. The lens that, if you are a beginning DSLR user, the lens that you get as the kit lens using 18 to 55 or a 24 to 70 or something along that range, that kit lens is going to be fine for you. Don't let the sales guy convince you to buy a 200 millimeter zoom lens until you learn how to become a photographer, until you learn how to use the camera, because otherwise you'll be wasting your money. Because as I've told many people, maybe you'll buy a DSLR and you find out you like macro shots. You like pictures of flowers and really close-up shots of bugs and dirt and textures and bricks and stuff. Well, if you bought a 200 millimeter lens, that's wasted. The reverse is true too. Maybe you learn how to use your DSLR and find you really like taking action shots or bird shots. Maybe you need a big lens, a 300 millimeter lens, an f4. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So learn how to use your camera first. Learn how to use the lens that comes with the camera before you start buying more things to go with it. There's just no point in buying a whole set of lenses and filters and things until you learn how to be a photographer. Learn how to be a photographer first. I was reading, catching up on what you guys are saying in the IRC chat room. Where was it? MacMan says, I don't know. I've stopped living in the bleeding edge. Yeah, I'm the same way, MacMan. I absolutely have. I have no interest anymore in being a free beta tester, an unpaid beta tester for any company, let alone Apple. Yeah. When Mac OS X first came out, I was one of the first to spend my $30 to buy the original version of OS X. I was one of those guys who was happy to be in the developer program and got new releases of OS 8 dot whatever and OS 9 dot whatever. And had my machine crashing me on a regular basis. But, I'm not that guy anymore. Don't care. Don't care. I don't need to be on that bleeding edge anymore of software or hardware. I can wait. Let others, let the young folks be on the bleeding edge. Let them take the arrows of fortune. I'll sit here with my computer that 99% of the time I'm happy with. It works the way I want it to. It works better than any computer I've ever used. Any operating system I've ever used. You can be as nostalgic as you want for the days of OS 7 and OS 8 and OS 9. I remember how much those days sucked. I remember being so frustrated trying to get things to work that I'm perfectly happy with Mac OS X the way it is now. Some things don't work, yeah. Some things are annoying, yeah. But it's still light years beyond what it was back in the old days. Folks, that's it. Hang on, let me just check my inbox, see if I got anything new from any of you guys. Robert Studer. Apple has 92,000 employees as of 2014, and 45,000 of them are in retail. Wow, Bob, thanks very much. I didn't realize there was that many people in the company. So, ArcSign, it is a large company from a pure head count, but very few, surprisingly few number of those people. Unlike Google, I think Google, like half their employees are engineers. That's not true of Apple. Apple has a small percentage of their employees as engineers. Robert, thanks very much. He says he's written while listening to Deep Folk Song, Deep Forest, and Bowen. I don't know if those are three separate things or not. I don't know what any of that stuff is. But thanks, Robert. Folks, so that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Send me email anytime you'd like. I love getting emails from you guys. Send emails to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com anytime during the week. I'll read some of them on the air. I'll respond to some of them personally, whatever it might be. And if you want a New Year's resolution, sending me money is one of them. Go to the website and check out how you can do that. Until next week, I want to thanks to all you guys for being tuned in. As always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!